Welcome to No Man's an Island, a podcast powered by Men's Therapy Hub, a directory of male therapists for male clients. I'm Dr. Jet Stone, and my guest today is Audra Horney, a licensed psychologist, founder of Modern Therapy Arizona, and one of the more visible voices in men's mental health right now. Audra has built something unusual. She's a woman who's made men's mental health a major focus, and she's done it in a way that actually reaches men. If you've been on TikTok or Instagram and you're interested in this space, you've probably seen her engaging content about men and psychotherapy with titles like Rules I Break as a Therapist for Men. But what I find most interesting about Audra is that she's direct, she's authentic, and men seem to respond to that because she's figured out something a lot of us therapists maybe haven't, that the traditional therapy setup is not always built in ways that actually work for guys out there. So thanks so much for coming on, Audra.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's walk through a little bit your origin story. I know that you studied psychology, and I think I saw women's studies at Wisconsin-Madison. So I'm a Big Ten guy at from University of Michigan. Can you walk me through how a women's studies major ends up dedicating her career to being a therapist for men? What pulled you in that direction?
Such a good question, and I hope we haven't scared off the entire audience already by putting that out there. So it's true. During my undergraduate university years, I was a psychology and women's studies double major. And believe it or not, my work today, my specialization in men's mental health, the therapy practice I've built specifically marketed to men seeking therapy, and my online content around men's mental health is all rooted in my 21-year-old identity as a feminist. And from, that's now 21 years ago, over time, what that has evolved into is my values today stand in a place of believing we all deserve access to inclusive mental health care. And through my training as a master's level clinician, and then in my doctoral program, becoming a licensed psychologist, my work was always really focused on social justice and a multicultural approach to my work as a therapist. I'm sure that that means a lot of self-reflection and personal work and awareness of my own biases, my own identities, and then being sure that I am taking those same multicultural identities of my clients into account in the work that we're doing, recognizing that we are all individuals and we all then have some sort of cultural background to us, regardless of how many privileged or marginalized identities we may hold. And so I did not pursue men's mental health. I did not go to graduate school to become a therapist for men. This work really found me, and it found me after I was outside of my academic training. It found me once I was really pounding the pavement as a therapist doing full-time clinical work. Again, with the same values informing me of believing that every client who walks into a therapist's office, every person who is considering therapy deserves to be seen as an individual, deserves to receive support, therapy, treatment, interventions that are catered to their unique lived experiences. And the work that I was doing with men early in my training, honestly, was just the work that I felt like I enjoyed the most and that I was best at. And as I continued to lean into that, I quickly realized that the training I received, although I took many multicultural classes and had a social justice multicultural lens to the work I was doing, I hadn't been informed about what that meant to be working with men. And, I think generally we may assume that men are like the majority population, or so many things, even research historically has maybe been done, medical research even, on men. But I believe over time, therapy has become a more feminized resource. And the majority of therapists are women, and the majority of people who seek out therapy are women. And because of that, I think there's unfortunately been a gap in the ways in which therapy can be more specifically catered to men, helpful for men, meeting men where they're at. And that has been now my mission. It's where I've leaned in, and that's the work that I'm, passionately hoping to continue for as long as I can, and to make changes, not just for the men that I work with, but more broadly in the field as well.
I love that origin story because it speaks to me, who trained, somewhere else in the country, differently than you did. But there is this gap in the training that, when you're actually working in practice with men of all varieties, it's like you realize you have to start doing some things differently to make this work and to build these therapeutic relationships. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm actually curious, looking back at your 21-year-old feminist self, what's something that she would have been surprised about? The, decades later version of you. Like, what is something that you've learned? Another way of asking this, like, what have you learned now as more of a seasoned psychologist that would have surprised your 21-year-old self?
I think I would have been surprised, specifically if I'm thinking about, working with men in therapy, is I would have been surprised at how eager men are for support that meets them where they're at, for therapy, for mental health support for them. I think there is a misconception that men are resistant to therapy. I think men are very justified in being hesitant to pursue therapy. I also think that we've maybe created a system where it doesn't always seem like therapy is for men. So how can we call someone resistant to something that doesn't seem like it's for them in the first place? And so what I've been pleasantly surprised by is how eager and willing and motivated men are once they realize this resource is not just available to them, but for them, created with them in mind.
Yes. And that's what I think you speak to on your social media channels that spoke to me, and probably a lot of other therapists out there as well. Have you received any pushback, any feedback from other therapists about kind of like making this declaration, like a therapist for men? It's so welcoming for a guy. Like, I'm taking off my clinical hat on and just putting on my therapy client hat. Like that's a welcome sign.
Yeah.
That there's not very many of those welcome signs out there, at least not yet. I think it's growing. Um, so my question there for you is, like, what is it like to be a therapist in this space? And what's the feedback like? Positive, negative, neutral?
Um, I would say overwhelmingly positive and neutral. As you were asking that question, I was, internally reflecting on the fact that I haven't received pushback from other therapists. Kind of smirking to myself because I think I present in a pretty like confident, no bullshit sort of way. And so, I don't waver in my commitment to this. I really stand behind what I say. And I think I have a very sound argument. And so I'm a type 1 Enneagram too. So I'm just like, I know I'm doing this right. Like I know what I'm standing for and I'm going to do this as well as I can. So I don't know if I leave too much room, right? Like I'm always self-critiquing and I'm always working on like, what are my blind spots and how can I grow and what is missing here? And how can I deliver this message not just to men, but to therapists in a way that can be palatable. So I don't know if I leave much room for pushback, but I would say like overwhelmingly, it's just been positive. I will not lie that therapists are surprised when they first meet me and they ask, oh, who do you work with? What's your specialization? And I say I'm a therapist for men. There's often a pleasantly surprised reaction that they have, like, oh, wow, really? That's really needed. That's great. Like, it's a quick pivot to that's great, but the initial reaction is oftentimes surprise. And I think that speaks to how rare it is. It's, I've seen more and more therapists becoming more public, more female therapists. That is like, it's more rare for a female therapist to identify as a therapist for men.
Yes.
And so I think that unfortunately is even surprising to therapists.
I think sometimes it would be surprising, which is why I asked about it. And again, it's such a like a welcoming sign to see that. I want to dive right into some of the content that you've created because, like I said, it spoke to me and it speaks to others. That there's a list of Instagram rules. And for those who follow you, they'll know what I'm talking about, where you talk about like just breaking traditional therapy norms. You curse first. You don't use soft, calming voice. You ask why. You tell clients where to sit. I could just list the other ones off too, but like, what's the thinking behind those? Like, how'd you land on them? And maybe, because there's a bunch of them there, I'll let you, let's focus on the soft, calming voice because it's
It's funny. That's the one that was, I posted this both on Instagram and TikTok, and in both platforms, like that seemed to people like nails on a chalkboard, like how triggering it was. Because in my post, I sort of mimic the like, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so proud of you. Please open up. You're safe here. Like, and the reaction people had to me even acting out that soft voice was it was triggering, to say the least. And so to me, like, really what it comes down to is like that whole post to me could be summarized as: therapist, be a human and treat your clients like a human. Why are we going to show up and act any differently than we would talking to someone else in our life that we want to build trust with and that we want to connect with? Granted, as a therapist, we walk in and I have my professional hat on and my ethical hat on, and I'm utilizing evidence-based interventions. Like, I'm doing my job and doing it well, but I am in the business of people. I am in the business of relationships. And so if I'm showing up hoping that my clients, like, really what I do is work with my male clients to help them get to a place of authenticity. What's behind the mask? How can you live a life that feels true to you? And if we're working towards authenticity, but I'm showing up as some therapist, stuffy, robotic version of myself, how are we fostering authenticity in a relationship if one person in that relationship isn't being real? And so unless, to me, those rules aren't necessarily the rules all therapists have to follow. These are the ones I break because these are the ones that are true to me. It is true to me. I don't swear in session with my clients just because I think my clients need that. I swear in session with my clients because I swear in my life. I don't use that soft voice in session with my clients because that's not how I talk. And so ultimately for me, it's about finding a way for me to show up authentically, professionally, and authentically, to model and invite and give permission for my clients to do the same.
And I think it, in some ways, models the relational styles of how many men were raised into that.
Yes.
A lot of times cursing and shooting the shit, talking about sports is a way in to deeper vulnerability. And there's just something about that post that reminds me of, I hear a lot of women talk about the ick factor in dating. And that isn't actually, there is an ick in there. And I wonder with therapists, it's, the soft voice and whatever, you don't want to like shame people for how they talk. You're just being authentic. But I think sometimes I found it actually defensive in therapists that if you haven't dealt with your own anxiety, you sort of go into like warmth and terminal niceness and like soft mode. And I'm just putting that out there that in some ways doing the work ourselves as therapists and getting confident enough in the room to work with men who might present with more intensity, let's say, or with different relational styles, I think is part of the work of being a therapist for men. It's that self-work.
I agree. I think it is so important that I'm showing up, not just myself, but confidently myself, not arrogant, not cocky, not trying to prove anything, but I want to make sure that when my clients walk in, they feel comfortable. And I think part of that is feeling like I'm myself with them. I'll have clients now who have found me through social media. And the last thing I want is for you to get a sense of my personality or sense of humor or my style and then walk into my office and feel like I've bait and switched you. And now I've got this quote unquote therapist persona and we're going to interact differently there. I want you to feel like I am being genuine with you. And I also want you to feel like I am confident in the room with your emotions, whether that be sadness or depression or crying or anger or irritability or aggression. I want you to be able to come in messy. I want you to be able to show up honest. And especially, I think for men working with a woman, like I need to make sure that I am okay with that I've done that work, that I'm working with clients that are, a good fit for me so that when they come in, they can trust like Audra's got me. Because so many men don't feel like they can lean on anyone else. They can't rely on anyone else. They are a burden if they do lean on anyone else. And I want to make sure that at least in those 50 minutes in session with me, they can trust I've got them.
Yes. That coming in messy part, I think is important. My experience working with a lot of men in therapy is that they come in feeling really disorganized, especially if they have like perfectionistic qualities. Like they want to get it right. They're not going to speak, or they don't even feel worthy of being in therapy unless they can really nail down exactly why they're here and what they need. And I wonder, what do you like? For me, it's a lot about like front loading clarity up front in therapy, like early on explaining the process. Like you're supposed to come here and not know what the fuck is happening, or necessarily you don't have to come in with like, the exact agenda of what needs to happen. That's my way of normalizing that. Like, you can get, you cannot have words for what you want to say. I'm wondering if that's your tact as well, or what other ways do you work with men who feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin in
what do
the
I even
therapy
do
process?
here? Yeah, I completely resonate with what you're sharing. I do so much of that front loading, and I really see it as my job to educate men on the process, because not only is therapy foreign to a lot of men, but these sort of like emotionally intimate relationships and this sort of like one-on-one intensity in a relationship is new for a lot of men as well. And so I want to err on the side of assuming, the majority of my clients have never been in therapy before. And so I want to give you as much information and want to make sure you know that there are no dumb questions here. If you're not sure what to do, that's my bad that I didn't explain that well enough. And I want to make it clear sort of like what we're doing here, why we're doing it, and like let me take the lead. I do a lot of that scaffolding early, and whether it be the initial consult call before we've even agreed to work together, like really being clear about, all the steps we're going to go through and why. And then through our work together, I see that education around the therapy process, around mental health and diagnoses and coping strategies. Like I do so much education in a non-shaming way, in a just, empowering way. Like I want you to have as much information at your disposal as possible because I want you to be empowered, but I don't expect you to have that information now. And in addition to that, this has been part of the reason I've been so committed to the content that I create on social media, is because that does that front loading for me. The men that I'm working with now are finding me through social media, or maybe they're finding me elsewhere. Maybe they receive a referral, but then they're able to see not just my website, but they're able to see a lot of content, which is a lot of talking head content on social media, where I'm very clearly laying out what I stand for, what therapy is like with me, how to do an intro call, what to expect in your intake session, what therapy can be like, what sort of treatment models exist. Like I'm doing so much education there. And so many of my clients now are coming in, they're oftentimes following me on social media for quite a while, building trust, seeing like, is she consistent? Can I actually be supported and helped by this person? So by the time they're coming into my office, they've got some therapy know-how and some education there already. And they're able to come in with at least a general idea of what to expect because they've been able to receive that information anonymously, confidentially on their own terms prior to even starting the therapy process.
That's so interesting. I had not yet thought of the way that social media presence for a therapist in your case, like already builds, preloads a transference, right?
Yeah.
Into
Well,
that you don't even know about.
no, I mean, it is, we got to be careful because there is that like parasocial relationship that occurs. Like my followers are able to build a relationship with me before I even know who they are.
Sure.
And I think that is something for therapists. I wasn't trained on how to navigate that as a therapist. So this is new. And a lot of therapists some therapists decide not to see clients who follow them on social media for that reason. But in my opinion, working with men, this is such an asset to the work we can do, that men are able to build trust and rapport with me. Like I said, I'm showing up on social media really honestly. I'm showing up the way that I do in my office. Build a relationship with me, build trust with me. And then by the time we have then our initial consult call, which is what I do with all potential new clients, is we have 20 to 30 minute free phone call just to see, is this a good fit? Can I actually help you? Or is there someone else who might be better fit? And during that initial phone call now, I mean, I've now experienced being a therapist before and after showing up on social media as a therapist. And now in that initial consult call, I have men disclosing things to me that they otherwise weren't disclosing until maybe the 5th, 6th, 10th session in therapy because they feel like Audra gets it. I know what she stands for. I can actually tell her what's going on. I don't have to wait. I don't have to go through those first, 1 to 10 sessions of therapy to build trust and to see, can I actually put myself out there? And so I see that such a huge asset that we can jumpstart that rapport and trust process so that therapy can be even more efficient with the clients who begin to work with me because they're coming in arguably the way that a lot of women enter therapy, feeling like, okay, I can trust this. This is a therapist. Let's hit the ground running. But for a lot of men, understandably, they want to take more time to slowly build that trust and to gauge, can I actually put myself out there? Can I actually tell my therapist these things that I said I was never going to tell anyone? And I will even have clients who have that rapport and really hit the ground running. And then a few sessions in will say, you know what? I came in here ready to do the work, but there were 2 or 3 things I was never going to tell you, but I think I want to tell you now. Like there's such a leg up in this process because they have decided to step into my office already feeling like they can trust what I stand for before I'm then with them one-on-one proving to them what I stand for.
Well said. And I think that they're now sitting across from you, speaking to, there isn't a mismatch between your online presence and at least your over video content,
Well,
which is
that's
helpful.
good to hear.
Well, it's not over curated or over edited. There's an authenticity there,
Yeah.
which I think helps you, and then it facilitates the therapeutic process in a way that's so interesting.
Well, and that's my hope. That's why I don't. And this may not resonate for those who aren't like in the social media space, but I don't batch my content, which means I don't record things weeks or days even ahead of time and schedule it to be posted. I do it very off the cuff, spur of the moment. I don't script my content. I just record something, long form, and I may edit it down to clean it up. But it is very authentic. It is very genuine that I'm speaking to these topics because I want it to read that way. And because men can smell bullshit. I think a lot of people can, but like, especially men who are deciding whether or not to trust a woman, they can smell that authenticity, or they can smell that fakeness. They're trying to sniff that out. And so I want to make sure that I'm not just performing authenticity, but that I'm actually showing up. And whether you're finding me on social media, on my website, on a podcast, that there's consistency there, because otherwise trust is broken before that guy even has a chance to walk into my office.
Yes. Let's continue on the authenticity track and talk about vulnerability, because one of the other things that you've talked about on your social media channels, and I'm not on TikTok, but I am on Instagram. I know that you have a lot more followers on TikTok. One of these days I'll get on there.
All the guys are over there. There's like this degree of like anonymity over there,
Interesting.
where men are able to, you should hop over just to see my comment sections, because men are able to engage with my content over there in a way that I think is a lot safer than on Instagram.
Okay. I will. I want to talk about emotions in men.
Yeah.
And maybe a good segue in, and one of the things I loved is that you said something along the lines of, I don't care if you cried, but did you feel? And I write about male psychology, and one of the things I'm sort of been brainstorming is an essay on like male tears and our relationship with crying.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like there's so much there, because I think the assumption for many men, actually myself included, that tears, this biological signal of oftentimes sadness, sometimes joy, it's like a sure sign of authentic or true vulnerability, right? And if you're not tearing up, then you're not actually feeling in the right way. You're not winning therapy,
right?
If you're not crying. And I just want to let you expand on that, because you said on one of your posts, I don't care if you cried, but did you feel?
Yeah.
What have you learned about tears in men?
I mean, I've learned that they're maybe not going to tell us as much as we think they could. And honestly, I see that on both ends of the spectrum. I see men who are feeling deeply and doing this really like groundbreaking work and making so much change for themselves and not shedding a tear through that process. And I also see men who have relatively easy access to tears and may not be digging into all the different parts of themselves and what they are feeling in as dynamic of a way as someone who's not crying at all. And so, granted, do I have tissue boxes on both ends of my couch? Yes. And do plenty of men at times cry in my office and during sessions? Of course. But that's not the goal, unless I'm working with a client who's saying, I want to cry and I can't cry and I want to figure out why not and see what's blocking me and see if I can get past that. But if that's not the identified goal, there are so many other ways that we feel and express ourselves, because ultimately what tears are is an expression of a feeling or an experience. And can it be tied to how you are actually feeling and a indicator of what you're feeling? Yes, but not always. And so, yeah, I want men to know that that's not the MO. Like that's not my goal of therapy. I hope it's not most therapists' goals in therapy. And honestly, Jet, it's something that I can personally relate to, because I think I have a more quote unquote like masculine expression of emotion myself. Like I'm a fairly guarded person. I don't cry often. I don't cry publicly. I rarely cry in my own therapy. And I also know that I experience deep emotions and I'm very sensitive and I can feel vulnerable and in pain without those tears tied to it. And so who am I to, just even as a woman, who am I to judge a man for how he's showing his emotions? Like, again, are you feeling it? What are you feeling? Where do you feel it? For a lot of men, there's, a tension in your neck or shoulders, or there's a pit in your stomach, or there's like a heaviness in your chest. Well, let's focus on that. If that's where you're feeling this emotion, let's explore that further. Let's not assume that you crying is the ultimate goal.
Let's copy and paste that and put that out there, because I think for so many men, and I'm just thinking of specific, people that I've worked with, where it's like that's an added layer of shame to whatever else they're presenting
Oh my gosh.
with. Especially having worked in the with military veterans, right,
Yeah.
who've seen and witnessed so many horrific things. It's like, why haven't I cried? I must be a monster, right? There's like a stuck belief inside there.
Yeah.
So I hope those words that you just spoke can be heard by someone who's feeling like they're maybe not a monster, but maybe like robotic, right? And a
Right.
lot of men who I see are given that label of being
Mm-hmm.
emotionless or expressionless or robotic, or like in heterosexual relationships, you do see a lot of like, I need more expression from you. I need more of a range of facial expression and emotion that I'm doing, if you could see me on camera.
Yep.
What do you like? How do you work with men who are in relationships where they need to start being more expressive? Like, where do you start when someone does have more of like um, a less expressive, uh, exterior
Affect.
or something, right? Affect. Where do you go with that?
Well, I mean, there's a few things that quickly come to mind. One, when that's rooted in the relationship, whether it be, they're referred to me from couples therapy, or their partner, maybe their female partner is saying like, I just need more from you. Like, I wish you were more emotionally vulnerable with me. Like, you're a robot. I need more, right? I think that it is important to explore with my client. I think it's important to maybe zoom out a little bit. And I always wonder, is your partner wanting more emotional support? Do they want more room? Do they want you to be present for their emotions and connected with that? Or do they actually want more emotions from you? Because I think a lot of times partners in a relationship will say, I need more from you. And what they're really saying is, I need more emotional support from you, which in my experience, a lot of men are like, okay, what the fuck does that mean? Like, give me some direction, give me something tangible there. How do I emotionally support you? But I think a lot of men here, like, you want me to be more emotionally vulnerable. You want me to open up. You want me to cry, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, sometimes do that and have negatively reinforcing experiences in the relationship. And sometimes female partners don't know how to support their male partners through that sort of vulnerability. So I think it is very important to not jump to any conclusions about what does it mean when your partner says you're a robot. Like, what are they actually asking for? So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put that out there, because I think that is a miscommunication I see in relationships often.
Yeah, it is an important distinction. Um, it's it's something that I do see a lot in my work. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I have come to do more as a therapist for men myself is provide, I sometimes think of it as like okay, we know what happened, take one with that
Hmm.
situation where it didn't land. Like, let's say this
Right.
person is trying to be more emotionally supportive for their um, partner who's going through like a fertility process. Um, like, let's kind of like role play it out a little bit if they're
Yeah.
comfortable with it, because a lot of men are coming like they've never had a chance to talk through another way of being with someone
Mm-mm.
else. If not in therapy, then where? Like,
Right. And that's the um like the struggle that so many men are up against, is that they may be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and now in a relationship where they're being asked to be more emotionally vulnerable or emotionally supportive. But we have not socialized these men from the age of 2, like we do little girls, to be emotionally attentive in these ways, to have these skills, to have this language. And I think that's such a valuable component of therapy, is being able to practice that. I think it's a value add for men who work with a female therapist, if that's what they're seeking, to be able to navigate that sort of communication with a woman and to practice what that's like, and then to receive feedback from me as a woman,
oh
for
yeah,
me to be able to say, I know what you meant by that, and I'll be honest, that here's how I took it, or here's how I'm wondering if she'll take it.
hmm
Let's, if we give it another go and you focus more on the emotion and less on the behavior, right? Like, to be able to practice that is so valuable, and to be able to do that in therapy in a really supportive, safe way. Like, it may feel uncomfortable, it may feel embarrassing to normalize that, but to be able to say like, okay, but here's like we get to experiment in here a little bit,
yes,
and we get to practice this so that once you go back to your relationship, you've already put in some reps, like we do anything else, right? You've already gone through these motions and practiced it and gained some muscle memory so that when you're, prime time, that those skills feel a little bit more accessible.
Yes, and I think it also depends on how you work as a therapist, but working with men, like that's very valuable, which makes me think of this tension that I always carry with me between the being and doing, and that a lot of men, like if you look at the research, will say, I want a sort of an action oriented,
Yeah.
solution focused
Yep.
therapy. And as therapists, we know that life doesn't exist with this is what you need to do for this. We're not trained with like the right answer for everything.
No.
Obviously, now we're not advice givers. How do you? I think what you're saying there in this role-playing example I asked of you is that there's a mix between being and doing, right? Feeling somatically, and then giving them some type of experiment out in the real world. I think you
Yes.
mentioned that. Can you say more about like how you handle the tension between the being of therapy, presence, and stillness, and feeling deeply and the sort of getting out there and actually enacting?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that in every single session I have with a client, I should be providing both hope and solutions to some extent. And solutions don't necessarily mean a tangible skill. It may be, helping explain a symptom and linking that to a diagnosis. It may be helping them, build some insights in their relationships and give them an idea of how they want to navigate that relationship moving forward. It may be some coping skill that is very tangible that they're going to practice. But in addition to that like the hope or the insight or the validation piece of therapy is just as important. And what I often do with my clients is help explain how validation, especially empathy, support, is a solution. And it is unfortunately an intervention or a solution that few men have received as much as I believe they deserve to have received that. Just like space to be and to breathe and to be able to quote unquote sit with something and feel safe, naming how they feel or just feeling how they feel and not having the pressure to jump to a solution and run from it. I think is something that I know it's something that I work to help educate my clients on the value of insight, the value of understanding and owning their own story without any immediate intention to change it or to do anything with it, but to be able to kind of sit with themselves without that constant pressure and urgency to change.
Yes. And so I'll share a very quick story. I was on a bus, and I was related to what you just said. I was on a bus listening to two guys in front of me talk about their therapy experiences. So you can imagine like how like this is like the best time ever to eavesdrop. Yeah. I had my notepad out. I was taking notes. And each of them were talking about like, oh, I wish my therapist would. This is the direct quote: "Step up to the plate and just say the thing that they're thinking." Right? They even use that metaphor.
Yep.
And it's not to say that you should just be like, word vomit as a therapist, but there is something that I have noticed about shooting your shot as a therapist that really helps build rapport with men, and that I don't know how it necessarily relates to the being and doing thing we're talking about, but it is like doing as a therapist is that like can be great for the alliance. And so I guess that's my pitch for you to add that one into your rules.
I totally agree. I think too often I hear therapists fall back on this line of therapists don't give advice and kind of come back to that in ad nauseum. And if I were outside of the therapy world and just a client, I'd hear that and think, well, then what the hell are you doing? Like if you're not right, like it. And as a therapist, we know it means like, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I don't have the answers. So I'm not going to give you the quote unquote answers. I'm not going to say, that's right or that's wrong or do that or don't do that. I don't know all and I'm not in charge. And I think when therapists too often reiterate this line of we don't give advice, therapists don't give advice, we miss the part that you just hit on, which is, well, I'm going to be honest with you though. And I'm going to, I'll tell clients, like, I'm not telling you whether to do this or not do this, but I will tell you I'm worried that XYZ. Or I'm wondering if you've thought about this potential outcome. Or I'll tell them, like, hey, I know you're saying that you're fine, you're not anxious, or you're not depressed, or like it'll pass. It's just the situation. But I need you to know that everything you're describing checks the boxes for more chronic major depression, or this actually what you're describing is post-traumatic stress disorder. Like that, to me, that feedback, like that's the piece that I think is so critical is, okay, yeah, I don't give advice to my clients in the sense that I don't tell you how to live your life, but I believe that a big part of my job is offering you feedback and making sure you know that this is my feedback. I'm not like all powerful, all knowing, but I know a lot about psychology and men's mental health. And then you know a lot about yourself. And together, we're going to offer feedback and collaborate to help you find your way through this. And a big part of that for me is being involved in this process. I'm not just nodding and smiling and affirming. I'm challenging. Like, I don't think I'm doing my job if I'm not challenging you as a client. I don't think that's not the kind of therapist I am, at least. Like therapy, I'll joke with my clients sometimes, when they're saying it's a hard session or they were exhausted, they had a therapy hangover. And I'm like, dude, like you could have chosen an easier therapist. Like you know what I stand for. And I'm not doing my job if I'm not challenging you. If this isn't a little hard, then we're probably not moving the needle. And that's my responsibility. I'm here to play ball, right? And so like I'm going to show up every single time because I'm asking the same of you, and that to me, like that's ethical, that's professional, that's me doing my job.
Yes, and even the metaphorical aspect of it, I think, is important because you may not have the exact emotion words, but the metaphor gets at the heart, oftentimes, of what men are feeling. And what's great about this, is about this challenging thing that we're talking about here is that it's not necessarily, saying like, "Oh, you're wrong." It's actually putting out something for a client that they can take. They can reject. It gives you so much information about how much, their style, their moves when, they get uncomfortable, and they can also edit it. I always say that. I was like, you can edit this if you want, but I think XYZ, right? Or it makes, and it makes it collaborative.
Exactly. Like collaboration is so key. And I've been known to say with my clients, like, you can tell me to fuck off about this, but then I'll tell them. And so it's like full permission, right? To say, Audra, where the hell did that come from? Sometimes, honestly, sometimes the most powerful challenge I offer a client is me saying, I'm really worried about you.
Mm-hmm.
To slow down, to let them know, like, hey, I'm not just like co-signing on all of this. And I've felt snagged on some of the things you've said. And like, to me, that's a challenge, right? To me, that is confrontational. And in my opinion, like in my work with the clients who want to work with me, like that's what moves the needle, is them feeling like I'm invested, I'm paying attention, I give a shit. And that helps them lean in more. And it allows us to then work together to collaborate to figure out how we can get them closer to where they're trying to be.
Yes. And I think sometimes I do trainings with other therapists about working with men. And one of the things I emphasize is about language. And obviously it has to be, we've talked so much about like organic. It has to feel like it's actually the way that you would speak.
Authentic.
But there is something about like, how do you think about therapists who don't necessarily have access to that language of like that, saying, you could tell me to fuck off, but it just doesn't roll off the tongue, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it possible that there are some therapists who just might not be equipped to work with these more like traditionally masculine clients because of that? Or, I mean, I'm just curious how you think about that.
I think that when therapists are being honest with themselves, when therapists are doing their best work, it is with the clients that we are the best fit for, and that we feel like we can be our like full, true, honest, genuine like therapist selves, and it read as authentic. That's our best work. And so I know I'm not the best fit for everyone. I know that there are plenty of men who wouldn't be a good fit for me. And I know there are, female clients that aren't going to want to work with me. Like, I don't assume my style is for everyone. And as I mentioned before, like, this is the work that I've leaned into because it's what I felt like it is what I know I enjoy the most, and it is what I believe I am best at. Like, I'm good at this because it feels so true. And so I'm not trying to do anything that doesn't feel true. And if the things that I practice or the rules that I break aren't the ones that feel honest for you to break, then that's okay. Um, I would say that maybe you'll have, you know, a higher attrition rate for some of these clients, or maybe these clients won't find their way into your office. And I think that's okay. I think as therapists, I think we should be really focused on who we serve and who we don't. I think it is a mistake for therapists to be too open and too generalized in the clients that they serve. I think that is us biting off more than we can chew. Um, I don't think that you have to curse like a sailor to resonate with your male clients. But I do believe that authenticity goes a long way. And so whatever that honesty looks like for you, those are the clients that are going to connect with you. And if that's not traditionally masculine men, like, that's okay. Like, who are you serving instead? But for those therapists who do resonate with what I'm saying and feel like, oh my gosh, like, I had so many comments from therapists on that post of the rules I break as a therapist for men, from therapists saying, oh my gosh, it's such a relief to see this. I thought I was the only one. Oh, I feel better. I got in trouble in grad school because I did some of these things. And so that's a big reason why I show up online too, to normalize this and say, like, hey, like, I'm doing what I believe is like really solid ethical work. I'm seeing great outcomes. Like, my clients are happy. Like, I have, a lot of success in this work. If this is what you want to do too, therapists, there's space here for you. And there's so many clients who want to be able to find you, who would feel really supported in that approach.
Is there anything from your own, as we wrap up here, from your own therapy experiences as a client or patient,
Mm-hmm.
however you want to, whatever language you want to use on that,
Yeah.
that you've brought into your work as a therapist for men that, like, you've learned from your own therapy experiences on the other side of the aisle?
I mean, I I have a track record of seeing a therapist for. I'm a terrible client. I think a lot of therapists are terrible clients, because for a lot of reasons. We're tricky. And I had a track record of, seeing a therapist a few times and then deciding, like, that's not a good fit, ghosting them. I'm fine, right? I say a lot of things that my male clients do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can handle it on my own. There's a reason why I'm drawn to this work with men. I can relate in a lot of different ways. And the most successful therapy I've had is when I was really upfront with my therapist about, hey, I have a track record of ghosting my therapists. I want to be real here, but it's hard for me to do that. I mask even when I don't realize I'm masking. I want you to challenge me. I want feedback. I don't want somebody to just support me here. Like, I want you to challenge me. And when I found a therapist who was willing to do that, I stuck around because it felt productive. And so I want to, I clearly I offer to my clients a lot of what I'm looking for. I create space. I've learned I'm creating space for clients that I wish I had more of, or that I seek myself in therapy. And so some of that is about, challenging my clients, being very real with my clients, utilizing self-disclosure with my
Mm-hmm.
clients. I think a lot of therapists are trained to be super cautious, and like, understandably, we want to be so thoughtful about how we bring ourselves into the room. But I know for a fact that if I'm not self-disclosing anything with my clients, they're not building a deep relationship with me. They're not sticking around. I need to be human in the room too. And so these are things that I have learned in therapy, largely based on what I felt like I needed. And again, that speaks again to like the authenticity with which I'm bringing myself to this work. Like I'm in it with them. I'm not sitting high up in some ivory tower saying, here's what I know, here's what you have to do, here's what some woman is telling some man. Like I'm not a man, but I have a lot of experiences. I can resonate in a lot of ways. I'm in this with you. I've been in the work as well. And I'm bringing those lived experiences into the room. I'm just sitting on the other side of the couch today.
That, I think that's also something that for those of you who are listening who are considering like going into therapy again or trying it again, it's like come in with that type of mindset of say the thing. And the same way we're encouraging therapists to say the thing. It's like come in and say what hasn't worked and what you're looking for, and that like you're a person that really can handle feedback and you want to hear it. So
and ask the therapist if they can do that. Like a good therapist is going to tell you if they can or if they can't. And if they can't, they are going to help you find someone who can. But call them to task. Say, hey, therapist, like here's what I need. Can you do that? Will you do that? And hold them accountable.
Yeah, and that speaks to the match, which is one of the answers that you've given here. Is like it matters so much. Before I let you go, we ask all of our guests this question. It's one of these days we're going to compile all these, and it's going to be like a book of some sort. But if I gave you the keys to the vault and you could do anything to advance the cause of men's mental health, what would that be? What would it be?
I'll speak from a therapist who has a practice in the US. And so I'm not totally sure on how the logistics of this work in the UK, which is I know where a lot of your audience comes from. But what I see, the barrier that I come up against now, like I'm reaching those men who are uncertain about therapy. I'm offering some education, normalizing their experiences and making them curious about therapy, desire, maybe even like searching for therapy. And then the barrier of access and cost comes in so quickly that it shuts down any possibility for them to actually pursue that and explore that in a meaningful way. And so it seems like a bit of an obvious answer, but to be able to eliminate those barriers of accessibility and cost. So unfortunately, therapy is cost prohibitive to so many, and access to great therapists even is limited based on where you are located or the language you speak, or if you're a man looking for a specific kind of therapist, because we need more therapists for men to be here in this space and vocal about what they do. And so that is what frustrates me most now is I feel like I engage daily, constantly with men who are like, okay, I actually want to do this. Like, all right, Dr. Audra, like you convinced me, like I'll try out therapy. And then they look into what their insurance covers, or they see who they have local in their area, or they see what the cost may be. And very quickly say, well, fuck that, never mind. And like, to me, that is just such, that's like just such a tragedy right there that we're like, we're so close. And then access kills it. And I wish that weren't a barrier, because the emotional, like the vulnerability barrier is the hardest one. Like that is to me the biggest hurdle to actually cross, is the like believing therapy could be safe for you, believing it could help, and believing you're worth it and that like you deserve this. Gosh, if we pass all of those and then we don't have access to someone, therapists are full or therapists are too expensive, then the system is failing us.
Yes, the system, especially in the US. Chris, my co-host, could speak more to this, but there's more access in the UK, so we're really screwing it up here over in the United States of America.
Yes, we are.
You've been an awesome guest. Thanks so much for taking time out. And
absolutely.
It's been just a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to No Man's an Island. If you enjoyed this, please share, like, and subscribe so more people can join in the conversation. This podcast is powered by Men's Therapy Hub, where you'll find more resources, support, and a directory of male therapists for male clients. Don't forget to follow our Instagram and TikTok at Men's Therapy Hub. The music is by the Swedish artist Reindeer, spelled Raindear. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.